Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is David and once again I'm joined by Sam for yet another Friday night deadline. This time it's game week 4, the last Friday night deadline for a long time. It feels like the end of a bit of a slog, doesn't it, Sam? How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. I don't like Friday deadlines. Like I much prefer. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because I much prefer the Saturday deadlines in that you can kind of get up on a Saturday. It doesn't feel as panicked or as rushed or as stressed. But also the Friday deadlines just feel like a nightmare. But then Saturday mornings when you've had a Friday deadline and you're locked, you can't do anything about it. Is also kind of nice. So I'm quite conflicted, I guess. And I am struggling to make my decisions every week before I come on here, but have made have made a transfer.
Hey, well done. I mean, I never make them before I come on here. I don't know why I do this to myself. I make them live and I really am playing with fire. But I think the people want to see fire.
They want to see you panic.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping on. And we got it at game week 1, to be fair, because it was literally at like 6:27 p.m. and then Andy's like, "Oh no, I think Gabriel's out." And then we just like and then what followed was literally like 10 minutes of Andy literally sat back being like, "Oh,
What do I
David,
do?
I can't believe it." And so that was, I felt bad, but I mean editorially it was great content. So yeah, fingers crossed we can get some more stuff like that today. But yeah, you certainly don't get that with the Saturday ones. That's a great point. I never thought of it that way. In that. Yes, the Saturday deadlines don't feel as stressed, but actually a Saturday morning after a Friday night deadline is genuinely bliss because
Yeah,
there's nothing you can do. And it is true time off work, especially for people like us. Yeah.
exactly right. So you kind of get to a Saturday morning when there's been a Friday deadline and you just wake up and you just kind of get on with your day. You don't have to think about it. And I do sort of like that. So I have quite enjoyed the fact that the last few Saturdays have been stress free from making decisions, worrying about who's going to start perspective, because there's no point at that point. You're locked in and you're done. But yeah,
Here we
I
are.
don't
Here
know.
we are. Well, we're going to have
I
to get
will.
used
I
to it,
will
aren't we?
like getting back to Saturdays. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think once we get back to Saturday deadlines, we'll get back into that routine, and I'll enjoy that.
Yeah, and one other thing that, of course, that we're going to be able to squeeze into a Friday night with the Saturdays coming back, of course, is the member streams as well. We had one last night, but of course, Friday night is the usual slot for those of you who are Fantasy Football Scout members. So I will just stick up the usual reminder for you guys to get your membership sorted out before the next deadline, because, of course, one of the things you do get with that is those exclusive videos which go into lots of detail with the members area. We had Andy, FPL Mode, you may know him, of course, from the Scoutcast on last night with Az, who you might have heard of, might not have done, don't know, we'll see. And then, of course, Seb will be on there quite a lot as well, who does a lot of work with Andy on Scoutcast. So make sure you get yourself sorted out for that. That is one advantage, of course, of those Saturday deadlines coming back. An extra time slot for another video, which I'm always going to be licking my lips at. So yeah, that's always good as well. Of course, we've got about an hour and a bit before the deadline passes. So if you've got lots of questions, then stick them in the chat. As ever, the usual procedure applies. If you want a guaranteed answer, then Super Chat is the best way to do it. Otherwise, stick it in the chat and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. And anyone who sent their teams in on Twitter as well, don't worry, we will go through and we will rate your teams at a later point in the stream. There's about 115 of you watching live, so thanks for joining us. Good to see some usual suspects in the chat like RT Whitby, and we've got FBL El Adarian, who was a very avid super chatter last week. We're indebted to you. You're keeping the lights on for another week, so thanks, my friend. And some questions already, which we'll get to in a bit. Now, before we get on to sort of the specifics of people's teams and things like that, I always like to just round up some of the team news, because there are many people out there on a Friday afternoon who don't necessarily have the time to check that stream out. You've only got an hour and a bit left, so you've got to cram all your content in. So we're going to do a sort of team news light now. But then the other thing, of course, if you were watching that team news video, what did I keep telling you? Well, look, you can ask us questions about your team all you like, but we're just going to give you the news here. If you want that advice of what the team news means for your squad, Deadline Stream is where it's at, and me and Sam will do our best to help you understand what the team news means for your team. So let's start alphabetically, as we always do with Arsenal. And I suppose there's not that much to come out of this. We know that Tomiyasu is back from suspension. There's no word on Gabriel once again. So here we are for the 4th time talking about Gabriel. Arteta just seems not able to really comment on it at this point, and Tomiyasu's back. So surely this is last chance saloon for Gabriel now, right?
I don't think he's going to play again. I just think that there's a good chance that he's benched again. I think if he was going to start him, surely he does it last week when Tomiyasu was suspended. I think probably now is the time to sell him, to be honest. I think there's going to be, players that have got, or managers that have got other issues in their teams. Like, you might have a João Pedro in there and players like that as well. So Gabriel just feels like a real luxury hold right now, given that he's not playing and he's got a really difficult fixture against Manchester United if he just does start. So just swap him for one of the cheaper options that's performing well and playing regularly.
Yeah, well, in the famous words of Claude, who may rest in peace, of course, famous Arsenal fan, it's time to go for Gabriel for sure. I am hoping to sell him, but if I do, it's probably going to have to be a hit. I've got 2 free transfers, and so it's all, in many ways a luxury sell. In many ways, because he's just on my bench. So we will come back and talk about that in a little bit. And if there's anyone else who still has Gabriel problems, don't worry, that's what we're here for. Every week you just
Friday night Gabriel problems.
That sounds like a sitcom, but I would watch it. It would be on maybe E4. Would it be cartoon or real life? I don't know. What do you think? Gabriel problems. It would be about Arsenal, probably.
I think he's got to be kind of a caricature of himself in this.
Yeah,
because
that's true.
We've gone from him being like first choice for Arsenal last season and brilliant to, I mean, where has he even gone? It's almost like where's Wally, but where's Gabriel?
Yeah, or perhaps maybe like an FPL version of Hot Fuzz, where he was so good in the London Met that we're promoting you as Sanford, Gloucestershire. Sorry, where? That's what I reckon.
Amazing.
If you've got any Gabrielle sitcom ideas, stick them in the chat, and we will do our best to. We'll put you in touch with Tom Davis, the comedian who was on a couple of weeks ago. He wants to make an FPL sitcom, so maybe that's where we can get started on that. But yes, let's get rid of Gabrielle, much like Arteta likes to. Alphabetically up next in terms of the headlines. We've got more stuff to come out of Brighton in terms of forwards. We got a few people asking about Pedro. In fact, I think it was actually our first question that came through from Dani. She said, "Should I start Pedro or Stupinan?" That question is probably going to be influenced by the fixture. Newcastle, of course, are very good. But we've got a little bit more information out of De Zerbi that Danny Welbeck is now ruled out of game week 4. Some people are saying 'twas ever thus, but he had been fit for a little while. He's out of the situation now. So is Enciso. Lallana, of course, is still around, but I suppose it's one less person. Does it maybe give us a stay of execution for Pedro? What do you think?
Possibly, yes. I think, Pedro, it's interesting because just before I came on here, and just before I sent Max, my older one, out to a birthday party, we were looking at his FPL team and we were kind of pondering on the Pedro issue. And these comments about Welbeck actually made me go to him, maybe just leave Pedro for this week because he, without another body at Newcastle, even if for the game against Newcastle, even if Pedro doesn't start it, he's coming on and getting some minutes in that game. So I think he's not necessarily an immediate sell. I still think he's a sell. And I think if you've got a free transfer burning a hole in your pocket, then doing Pedro and you've got some money, doing Pedro up to Jackson or, even an Ollie Watkins against that Liverpool defence, which is going to look makeshift at best, I think is the best way to describe it, or a Wissa instead if you haven't got him, does make a lot of sense. Alvarez, if you want to go for Alvarez, they all make a lot of sense. And of course, we do now have the Cameron Archer option if you want to downgrade him and save a little bit of money. So I don't think it's a priority that you have to do it this week, given the Welbeck news. But I do think that longer term, you're going to want to move him on. So it's one of those, isn't it? If you've got other problems in your team, fix them first. If you've got no other problems in your team, then maybe still continue to fix the Pedro thing anyway, because the fixtures are difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be very team dependent. And as Christian Alcazar says in the chat, he's got 99 problems, but Gabriel ain't one. So that's potentially the theme tune for our little sitcom. It is going to be team dependent, as you say, with Pedro. I think so. I haven't made my transfer yet, but I think I've been quite public with the fact that I probably will be selling Pedro because I don't have Jackson. So I think in some respects, it's also a case of, it's always team dependent, of course, but I think it may also be a case of who you don't have, because I do think you need to have a Chelsea coverage for the next 5 or 6. Brighton's fixtures aren't as good by comparison. So, yeah, that's the situation that we find ourselves in. Let's move over to Burnley now. And good news for your boys, Sam, is that Ekdal and Bayer both missing from the Burnley defence for game week 4 when Tottenham are coming to Turf Moor. Exciting news. Absolutely
outstanding. Yeah. I think that is good news for Spurs, and I think that does increase the chances of attacking returns for the likes of Maddison, increases him in as a priority sell. As a priority buy, I would say.
Yeah, you want us to sell him and you to keep him. That's what we get accused of as content creators all the time. Like, oh, you just want us to sell players you've got. Well, Sam, you've confirmed it. Terrible.
I mean, I literally don't think that anyone would believe that I would be selling Maddison anyway, given that my Spurs bias is always there. But
yeah, that's very true.
I think that I think it's really interesting actually with Spurs. We'll talk about my team, I'm sure, in a bit. I've done a Spurs transfer in this week. I think there are so many options that you could go with, but Maddison is the absolute. He's the one that we should be aiming to have in our teams if we don't have already. And I think a lot of managers will struggle with that potentially because those midfield 5 spots, we spoke about this last week, those midfield 5 spots they're so contested, aren't they? Because there's so many options that you could have there and people are going to be wanting to go for the likes of Sterling. So you're going to end up having to sell decent options to bring in these other players. So it will be interesting to see what people do this week.
Yeah, it's prime real estate in midfield at the moment. Prime real estate also, what our overall ranks are right now. We've had a few comments, Sam. I don't want to be too uppity about how we're getting
Just
on.
saying,
But,
they've got the dream team in.
Yeah, Magambo says, wow, 19k and 46k ranks, and then has used the emoji with like the money eyes and the money mouth. Just the whole face is money. Well, I mean, it's what my team value looks like right now. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, I'll try not to brag too much about how I'm getting on. Sam is only sort of 5 points behind me, and there's about 30k difference, which right now is just to be expected. So let's get some likes on the video for Sam. I can't sit here and be like likes for me because I'm not vain enough. But Sam's having a good start. Okay, don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Let's get some likes for Sam. She's had a busy summer balancing kids and work, so she needs the likes, guys. Let's get some thumbs up for that.
I need a spa break is what I need.
Well, perhaps maybe you need a SAR break because we do actually have we have a question on Pape Sarr, who I was about to ask you anyway while we're on the subject of Tottenham. Shaunak says, Sam, what do you think of Sarr at 4.5? Is he like a decent cover of Maddison if you don't have that budget? It's a really interesting question. There's a lot of broad conversation topics there about, quote, covering FPL assets. It's a C word that we're not allowed to use. There's many of those, of course. But yeah, so what do you think? And I suppose this Burnley situation right now may be a little bit short in defence, perhaps maybe factors into it. So yeah, take us away on a Sarr break.
I mean, Sarr was... I love this. Sarr was my differential of the week last week on the FPL pod because, he is just... The position that he's taking on the pitch means he's going to be getting in all those right attacking areas. He's not afraid to have a shot. He will get attacking returns. We will see them come. So I think if you can afford Maddison, then you just go there. Can you cover Maddison with Pape Sarr? No, I don't think you can. I don't think that Pape Sarr is going to return the level of returns that we will potentially see from Maddison this year. But I do think as an additional option, I think with Spurs, you're going to want a Spurs defender probably for a lot of this season, particularly given that they're so cheap and they're so attacking, and the way that Postecoglou's teams work, they will get attacking returns. And I think, the wing backs, they're great, right? They're going to get attacking returns. Udogie, if Porro stays on that Porro Royale thing is going on over on the other side, but Udogie looking great. But I also think that the centre backs work really well as FPL options this year because with Maddison in the team and the free kicks and the corners that he's supplying and the fact that Van der Ven and Romero go up for them week upon week means that they will get attacking returns over the course of this season too. They're more likely to get goals, whereas I think, the wing backs more likely to get the assists. So I think you want one of them. I think you want Maddison. So the question is, do you want to treble up on Spurs? That's not something we normally like to do in FPL because Spurs can be interesting. I think is the way that I would say it. And they go Spursy, yeah. But we're not seeing that quite so much. I mean, we saw it in the League Cup, but we didn't. It was a very changed team that he put out in the League Cup. So I would argue that that's not really a reflection of what Postecoglou's team has been like so far. I don't think that there's an obvious third pick at Spurs apart from Pape Sarr. I think if you want to go for a cheap, if you are one of those managers right now that's looking at having Haaland with 2 mid-priced forwards, like you want Jackson and you want, I don't know, maybe you want to take a punt on Darwin after last week or somebody in that sort of price bracket, then you might want to be looking at a slightly cheaper midfielder, particularly if you want to keep with the likes of Bruno or Rashford and you want to keep Saka. And if you've got 4 midfielders that are relatively expensive and you've got a couple of premium defenders in there, then I think Pape Sarr could be a really nice pick. But I do think if you can afford to go Maddison, then you should do that instead.
Yeah, I think he's got to be considered as a supplemental Spurs investment rather than an alternative.
100%.
And I was just having a look at some of the numbers, actually. And once again, people are well used to me being a broken record on the Fantasy Football Scout members area, but a couple of the tables in there, it's very easy just to compare how players have performed so far. And interestingly enough, they were actually closer than I expected, Maddison and Sarr. But the point you've made, Sam, still stands in terms of the numbers. There is a gap. It's just not quite as big as I perhaps expected. So Maddison has played more minutes, 253 to Pape Sarr's 152. I think that's, we all know that Maddison is more integral to the team. 14 penalty box touches for Maddison, 9 for Sarr. Maddison's created 9 chances. 2 of them have been big. Sarr has created just the 3, and 1 of them has been big. So, 3 times more creative is Maddison. They've actually, so this is what I mean about not being as far apart as I thought in some areas. They've actually had the same number of shots in the box, but Maddison has had more big chances. So it means that when he's having an opportunity in the box, it is more likely to be a big chance. They've had 4 shots on target each, but Maddison miles ahead on the expected goal involvement, 2.89 to Sarr's 1.24, and their goal conversion rate right now is relatively similar. So Maddison is clearly the better option, but Sarr's not like a bad one, as you said. And so what we're seeing from Sarr is not awful thus far. So yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And apologies to Artie Whitby, who's told us off for using the FPL swear word coverage. We will try and offset it again. Oh no.
At risk.
We're terrible. Right, so let's move to a different part of London where there has been... Now I like this. We've had this with the Stupinan a couple of weeks ago. I say like this. I guess I can appreciate the narrative going on here. Somehow... I don't know how, maybe it's Elon Musk's fault, but disinformation seems to have become a little bit of a trend on Twitter. And I don't just mean Boona, who we all know he's joking, right? This rumour's come out of nowhere this week that Sterling, maybe not doing so well. It was based on, according to the Fantasy Football Scout Twitter admin, from baseless speculation. So going in 2-footed there are our boys. So it's nice to see. What we have established is probably all rubbish because absolutely nothing on him from Pochettino. So that's good.
Yeah, and there was a picture of him, wasn't there, that he posted with a like coming soon, or whatever he tweeted about. I think it's all speculation and stuff to make us all go a bit crazy and kind of second guess our transfers, particularly as a lot of people, like I do think there's a thing at the moment, isn't there, where obviously there's a lot of managers going very early on transfers, like happens, last week, it was on Friday night, wasn't it? Because Sterling had done incredibly well. And how annoyed was I with myself, David, that I'd sat here on that stream all afternoon and said about Sterling.
Yeah, we did.
And
Gusto as well.
I know.
Yeah. I don't even know why we came back.
Gusto was a thing as well, wasn't it? Like right on the deadline, people started saying Gusto wasn't going to start. And I was thinking, gosh, that would be really bizarre. So we're getting it a lot. And I think, people are moving early on transfers and then you get all of these rumours and then people make extra transfers to deal with it. I think you just have to listen carefully to what is being said by the managers and look carefully at the reliable sources on Twitter, as in like the people that post a training ground photo of them being there. That's a reliable source. Don't be kind of like panicking around things. If Pochettino, if Sterling was injured, Pochettino would have said that today in his conference.
And he also would have sort of said, even if he wasn't prepared to give away the name, he might have alluded to there being something. And so there was just no news is good news was very much what came out of the press conference. But you certainly make a very good point about who to rely on. I mean, I'm a big fan of the FPL sort of like social worlds on Twitter or X, whatever it's called these days. Who knows
whatever
now.
It is now.
Yeah, and all the other ones. But if you're getting it from FPL toilet roll, like, just don't bother, like... Just be careful.
Exactly.
If they don't want to show their face, that's fine. By all means, have a conversation with them. Some of my best friends in the FPL world don't show their face and are named after some inanimate object, an animal, or a meal. But do I necessarily trust them for ITK stuff? Not always. Sometimes I do. So yeah, you definitely have to be careful these days. But it does sound as if we can still trust the horse's mouth. Sorry, Pochettino, that is you. He's not someone who normally messes around with that. Can't say the same for some other managers. But hey, we move. Actually, let's go to Crystal Palace now, because last week we had Brighton's manager coming out and saying Ferguson is going to start. Well, right up the A23 to their rivals, Crystal Palace, we now have confirmation that Sam Johnstone is going to start this week. Now, I don't have Johnstone, but I do have Crystal Palace defence. Of course, this is important because Palace have signed Dean Henderson, and I know that there's a few people who've got Johnstone, and if your sub-goalie is maybe a Turner and you're a bit sort of like getting itchy about it, there has been some concern. But at least for now, for this game week, Johnstone looks safe.
Yeah, for this week only, though, I would say. So Dean Henderson doesn't do this move if he doesn't think he's going to be first choice, surely, because he's the part of the reason for leaving United is he doesn't like not being first choice. So I think he makes a decision based upon I'm going to go somewhere and I'm only going to go to that club if I think that I am going to be their number one goalkeeper. So at some point, I think Sam Johnstone owners have a problem that they've got to deal with, because sooner or later you'd expect Dean Henderson to get a start, wouldn't you?
I mean, especially when you consider how vocal he's been. I mean, in years gone by, you get a lot of very good goalkeepers just sort of quietly sitting on the bench and maybe just voicing their frustrations in private. But, I've come across many an interview where Dean Henderson has, to be honest, just completely slammed whoever it was who led to him not playing first team football. Because, I mean, to be honest, he must be looking at the current situation in England football and thinking, like, why the heck am I not the England number one goalkeeper? And that's not to suggest that any of the other options are bad. I mean, I actually think Pickford for England is an underrated goalie for England. But the point is, he's got every opportunity to be really competing for that place. And arguably 100%. The reason why that hasn't happened is he seems to have been sort of just kind of messed about a little bit and kind of slipped through a few cracks that have led to him just being the backup to people. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, that conversation, if he's prepared to have it in the public arena, he's absolutely going to have it in the private arena with his agent and, Crystal Palace,
totally,
etc. So
exactly, he's not even going to have a conversation with Crystal Palace unless there's been some certainties about game time, because with the Euros coming up for England next summer and with Pickford not being great for Everton at the moment, if I'm Dean Henderson, I'm looking at that going, there's a real opportunity here for me to stake a claim as the England's number one. I need a club that's going to play me first choice week upon week in the Premier League. So Crystal Palace must have offered some of those assurances, I would think. And therefore, if you are a Sam Johnstone owner, I think you've potentially got an issue that you've got to deal with. More longer term, you're all right for this week, but over international break, I think it's something you should probably look at.
Yeah, and some comments in the chat as well with Turner, it being deadline day and knowing for it. I mean, I must just say, I've been sort of preparing this, so I haven't been able to be as plugged into all of the moves. I don't have notifications for Fabrizio Romano yet. I probably should at some point. So I don't know if Forest are on the brink of signing a new goalie, but they have been after one all summer. So, there's a possibility that you could lose that one as well, potentially. So, definitely one to keep an eye on. Those of you out there with maybe an Anderson or a Gay, this is great news, because I think Johnstone and Henderson competing with each other are only going to make this defence better. I think they're both fantastic goalies, so I'm very excited about that signing for me, because I don't have Johnstone. So, yeah. Let's move to Liverpool now. And, of course, the big news, I mean, we kind of all know it anyway, but obviously Van Dijk is suspended for this game. But the interesting thing, of course, is that Konate is still injured. And whilst overall the squad is looking not too bad, and Thiago is unavailable but hasn't been, so like there isn't that much change elsewhere in the team. The fact that they're missing Konate and Van Dijk, actually, there's people thinking about selling Watkins, but I mean, I wouldn't sell Watkins ahead of this. He scored a hat-trick against this team when Van Dijk was there. So,
Totally agree. I totally agree. I think this is, like, I've got Diaby in my team. There's no way I'd bench Diaby this week, and you couldn't pay me to sell him. Like, part of my transfer decisions came down to the fact that I wanted Diaby in my starting 11, because I could have gone João Pedro to anyone else, but I need someone of my front eight who I'm prepared to bench, and it certainly wasn't going to be Diaby. So I think basically you're going to have a centre-back pairing of Gomez and Matip. They are not good enough to deal with these Aston Villa assets. They're just not. So for me, hold Ollie Watkins if you've got him. I would argue that Ollie Watkins is a transfer in this week based upon this news, because that Liverpool defence is shaky at the best of times, and it's even weaker this time around without Van Dijk. Trent always has his worst defensive games when he's not got Van Dijk and Kanate and that kind of centre back pairing there. So with Gomez and Matip in there, I would really expect to see Watkins and Aston Villa, who, by the way, have got a great record against Liverpool. We remember Ollie Watkins absolutely smashing it against them a few years ago. Yeah, I think it's a
good week for him, isn't it? And you
it's a good week.
mentioned about maybe even signing him, and obviously there's the DRB comparison as well. Interestingly enough, no Aston Villa player has created more chances than Watkins in the first 3 games. No Aston Villa player can match him for big chances, and in fact, only Jackson and Haaland have been afforded more big chances than Watkins so far. So he is so due a goal / Hall, and he's on the goals imminent table right now. I would push people to that video right now, but it's like an hour and a half and you haven't got long enough to watch it, so I'll just let you know that on the goals imminent video on Tuesday with Aston Villa fan Tom Freeman, of course, we're very much excited about what Watkins can do this week, so yeah, keep an eye on that. My issue here, to be honest, is I've got cash still, and yeah, okay, fine, well, look at David, oh, look at me with my first world problems, I've got 99 problems and cash is one of them. I don't know whether or not to start him, because he could go and get a couple of goals again, because for all the reasons we mentioned already, this Liverpool defence isn't looking amazing. So, I mean, we'll come on to it in a little bit, but this is a unique opportunity to really target the Liverpool defence that we're not going to get all the time. So do not shy away from it, is what I would say.
Brilliant. Yeah, I agree.
So let's move on to Man City now. We don't really have too much here other than confirmation that Foden and Akanji have now recovered from the illnesses that limited their ability to start and finish the game in Game Week 3. We've sort of seen a few bits and bobs on Twitter, X, from yeah, I know I'm going to keep doing that. Luke, who many of you will know, long time affiliate with Scout as well, is very good at predicting a Man City team. There's a new account out called like FPL Main Road, I think it is, that is sort of potentially like the Man City equivalent of like a Spion Cop or something. A bit of knowledge. And they seem to be very interested in Luke's most recent predicted lineup, which does feature Foden to start, but also there's sort of suggestions, if we can call them that, about I think Gvardiol and Grealish not playing. That's what I've seen anyway. I mean, it's always tricky. You never know on a Friday, but certainly what to expect. I mean, with a team like Man City, like everybody just tries to just do whatever they can to find out who's playing.
Totally. And I mean, look, they've signed new players. There's gonna be some changes, aren't there? I think as a phone owner, I am like looking at it going, well, I feel like I already got bitten last week by him being poorly, and only I must admit, when he came on and got that assist, I was like, well, thank God for that, because the thought of watching Salah afterwards not having him would have been a disaster. I think you have to kind of with Man City, you know that there's going to be rotation, but you also know that if Grealish is benched, if that rumour is true, I'd still expect him to get minutes in that game. I wouldn't expect him to not play at all. And so with attacking assets, I think that's less of a problem. I think with the defenders, it's more of an issue, isn't it? Because obviously you want to lock in that clean sheet from them. That's why you're investing in the Man City defence, is the reality. So if they get rotated and don't start, that is really difficult to kind of stomach from an FPL perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I know a couple of people that have Grealish. I think I would hold, even in spite of this. Most people have got Foden as their additional one, and I think it sounds like he's going to start, which I'm very excited about. Flipping this on its head, the Fulham situation is looking a bit dicey this week, because we've got a situation where it sounds like Palhinha is in Munich and is going to sign for Bayern. I think Harrison Reed, there's rumours that he's not going to be around too much longer as well. I think there's a couple of other injuries. They are very threadbare in midfield, the specifics of which Neil went into on the Team News video. There's a couple of people, and I'm going to make mention of, we had a super chat that came through, I think from Johannes on the Team News video, that said, should we triple captain Haaland this week? I mean, I'm not going to do it. I don't think you are either, Sam, but from the current situation, Fulham's XGC so far this season, I think it's the worst in the league. I think their minutes per XGC is also terrible, and that is before potentially losing all these additional players and having a very threadbare midfield this week. I mean, it's going to be messy, right?
Yeah. It's It is. I think, yeah, it always is, isn't it? Is the reality. It's always a bit of a, it's always a bit of a challenge for any club when they've got to face Man City. It's an even bigger challenge when your best player, plural, leaving one transfer window because Mitrovic, Paulinho, really difficult. And I think that Manchester City this week will dominate against Fulham, and I can see why people are talking about triple captain in Haaland. I absolutely can see that.
Oh, actually, sorry to interrupt you. In the last few minutes, the chat were yelling this at me, so I thought I'd just confirm it. It does sound as if Paulinho to Bayern is off.
Ooh.
It's collapsed. Now,
Interesting.
but the thing is, I don't think that necessarily changes your answer, because I think that I don't know, there's a chance that he doesn't play this week, because sometimes when you get these little transfer scenarios, what ends up happening is that it's a bit sort of like you've had an argument with your partner, and it's like, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to get 5 minutes, and we're just going to, I'll see you tomorrow, right? And then they don't, and so effectively the football equivalent is they don't play the game because they haven't trained, because it looked like they weren't going to be around, blah, 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 etc., etc. So maybe maybe actually doesn't necessarily matter that he hasn't actually gone. The thing about the triple captain is that you've got to find unique opportunities, and there still looks like there could be one this weekend. Because the Fulham midfield is terrible. Well, the Fulham defence is terrible anyway. So,
But without Ream, it's even worse. So, like, if they've lost Mitrovic, they've lost their goal scorer. Whether Paulinho goes or not, he clearly wants away. Ream's not there. The one thing that niggles is that Leno's actually a decent goalkeeper. Like, Lennon is a decent goalkeeper. He will make saves. So will Fulham get smashed? I mean, they probably will, because the defense isn't there to support Leno. But I can see Leno pulling out save points this week. I think it is an opportunity. There's definitely an opportunity there to give the triple captain armband to Haaland. Will we get a double game week in the future where he gets 2 really nice fixtures, though? That would be the one thing, because obviously we know that the Brentford game in game week 17 isn't on, so we know that's going to get rearranged. If that gets put in with, a really nice fixture in the new year, then maybe it's worth waiting. But I can look at this and see an opportunity for Haaland in a home fixture, which is where he was way better last season, against a team that is lacking in personnel for this week. It's definitely an opportunity to pull the triple captainship for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I won't go for it, and I don't think you would either. But sometimes you got to do stuff that's different to the crowd in order to make it work. So
totally,
yeah. We got a super chat, but by the looks of it, they didn't actually. Oh no, they have. Okay, they have asked a question. You'll like this, Sam. It's a very first super chat for £2 from Sam Bonfield Stan. Are you down enough with the kids to know what that means? Because I have a loose idea. I think it just means they're a fan. You Sam, you are a Harry Kane stan. Like, you stan Harry Kane.
Right.
And so this person stans you. That's cool,
right?
Oh,
that's nice.
They're a Sam Bonfield stan.
I don't think I've got any fans, so that's nice.
Well, no, it's a stan. It's a slightly different.
It's the same thing, right?
I think so. I think so. I'm gonna read their question, and whilst you're answering that question, I'm gonna go on Urban Dictionary and double check what a stan is. Google it. Yeah,
could be the total opposite.
I think I'm right. I think I'm right, but I'm 31, so I might be wrong. So.
You're younger than me.
Well, true, but certainly I'm not Gen Z enough to know 100% with confidence what a stan is. But I have a loose idea from. It's very popular in sort of like geek fandoms like Marvel and Doctor Who. So there's Sebastian Stan, who of course plays Bucky. No spoilers. There are Sebastian Stans out there. So like that's how I know about that one. So. There are Sam Bonfield Stan too. It's amazing. Right, so anyway, Sam Bonfield Stan has asked, I'd like Sterling over Maddison this week due to his record versus Forest, but should I transfer him out for Mitoma or Rashford? So it sounds like he's going for Sterling, Mitoma or Rashford. Which one leaves the team? And when you've answered the question, I will have an official definition of what a stan is.
So I struggle with this one because Rashford hasn't had the form, whereas Mitoma has. neither has got a great fixture this week. Rashford, obviously, going to Arsenal, Brighton, obviously, game against Newcastle. So both difficult fixtures. And then, so all you can really do in that circumstance is look at the form versus the fixtures that they have to come. Now, after this game, the Manchester United fixtures are better. So part of me thinks, well, look, if you've held Rashford this far, and given that we've now got we've now got news that Højlund is available, so we're going to see a proper number 9. And I already thought that Rashford was 100% better than he was the previous week. This week, in game week 3, he was so much better than he was in game week 2 because he was back in his wide position where he's so much better. So my view with Matoma is that he's probably the player to sell because the Brighton fixtures are horrible and you need to use those midfield 5 spots to target in on the fixtures. And sometimes that means sacrificing good players who could return points. I'm not saying I don't think Matoma can get points this week against Newcastle, because I absolutely do think that he can. But I think longer term, Rashford is probably a better hold than Matoma because of the fixtures and because we should start to see some increased better performances from Manchester United with a proper number 9 in the team. And therefore that improves what we could see out of Marcus Rashford. So that's my answer. I would sell Matoma.
Yeah, I think I'd do the same. I mean, I think a lot of us have been planning on moving on our Brighton guy for game week 4 anyway. It was those first 3 games we really wanted to target. They were kind of a placeholder for a Chelsea or a Spurs midfielder because we could see the prices were largely tracking with each other. So that seems sort of very on brand with those who are planning that kind of move anyway, to be honest. So yeah, I think that's what I would do as well. We have confirmation, by the way, that Stan means fan, but it's very nuanced. There's lots of nuances to this. A lot of people in the chat actually got this before I found it on Urban Dictionary.
It's made me blush.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so. Well, do we need to stop? Artie Whitby says Stan means stalker fan. Phenor 1977 says a Stan is a creepy fan. Stephen Harker says I'm sure it's really Az. Could be Az.
It could be Az.
Yeah.
Imagine if it is.
That'd be so funny. If sat there in his little room paying £1.99 just to say he's a Stan. But
he could just text me. He's got my phone number. He could just message me.
That would be such a flex. I know that one. That I'm Gen Z enough to know what a flex is. But according to Urban Dictionary, and so as I said, there's nuances here, and I should have known this because you don't really need to be a Gen Z because Eminem has been around for a very long time. It's a reference to the
Stan. Is it
Eminem
that?
song
Is it a
Stan.
reference to that song?
Yeah, the song is about
it.
an overly obsessed fan named Stan who writes letters to Eminem and ends up. We won't go into detail what Stan ends up doing, but he's very upset.
No, it doesn't end well. That story.
No, it doesn't. He's very upset that Eminem doesn't write him back. So don't worry, Sam Bonfield Stan. we answered your question. Don't do anything. The term means a very, very, just for more clarification, a very, very overzealous and obsessed fan of a celebrity / band / cast of a TV show or movie. I mean, arguably, you're kind of all three, Sam. You're a celebrity, you're on the cast of multiple TV shows, and you're also in a band with Lee. So, a band of FPL advice. And if you need one more clarification, I mean, Urban Dictionary is brilliant. Here is it used in a sentence. Person 1, I just love Ariana Grande so much. I would die for her. I would track her every move if I could. And person 2 says, whoa, don't be such a stan. So there we are. We managed to clarify what that means. And just in time, actually, FPL El Hadari is back with another super chat. And he's remembered from last week because we were like, these are great questions, but we do need the whole of your team. So he has given us that. So we've got Turner, Pickford, Saliba, Estupiñán, Chilwell, Colwill, Baldock, Saka, and Burmo, Sterling, Salah, Bruno, Archer, Pedro, and Haaland. I got one free transfer. Mm-hmm. Do I bench Saliba, or do I do Saliba to Diaz or Gvardiol and bench Pedro or Estupiñán? Okay, so there's a lot of layers here. We think Gvardiol's not going to start, so
definitely don't do that. If you're going to do it for Diaz or similar. I don't think you want to sell Saliba. I wouldn't sell Saliba this week. I just bench him this week. That's my plan, is to bench Saliba and then bring him back in for next week. I think he's looked all right like the first 4 game weeks. I don't think he's a sell right now. Pedro or Estupiñán. I mean, to be fair, with that team, that looks nice, doesn't it? Like that's a team that's set up already for the next few weeks. The biggest issue probably there is Pedro. So that probably is the transfer that I would make. Or in reality, the goalkeeper position is probably the biggest weakness, wouldn't you say?
I think so, because Pickford just hasn't been looking very good of late. Anyway, it was Pickford, wasn't it? Yeah, and then Turner. Yeah. I really like Flecken. Can you get Flecken, or have you got too many Brentford players?
Vicario, Edison, if you want to go for a City defender.
Yeah.
It depends on budget,
It
really,
does depend
doesn't
on
it?
budget. Yeah, I
don't
think.
know how much budget you've got.
Yeah, I could. I mean, it's a good squad, as it was last week. To be honest, goalkeeper is an excellent point. I think goalkeeper transfers are unfairly seen somehow as sort of pointless, but they can make such a difference. If you've got a guy who's just going to sit there and tick over with points, I mean, I'm already really happy with Flecken. I think that's what he's going to be this season. I think Brentford are in the top 3 for XGC so far. Definitely in the top 3 for fewest big chances conceded. His save percentage is pretty good. He's going to get a bonus when they do keep the clean sheets most of the time, because he's got good. So he gets all those additionals in terms of like passes and all. He's very good at getting bonus. So yeah, I mean, it's unfashionable, but yeah, why not try that? I mean, let us know, FPL Adari, if that's not going to work for your budget, as we've sort of talked about already. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. The super chats are pouring in now, actually, Sam, and we haven't even made it out of the team news section, but that's fine. That's fine. We've got just under an hour to go, so we'll try and get as many of these as we can. So Lindsay Eggleton says 1 free transfer, but I'm willing to take a -4. Salah and Matoma out for Bowen and Mbermo, or Gabriel and Salah out for Udogie and Bowen/Mbermo. So Salah out probably either for Bowen or Mbermo, and then it's whether or not Matoma leaves. Oh, I see. Sorry, right. I'm confusing myself now. It's either sell 2 midfielders to get 2 midfielders, or sell Gabriel and Salah to only get one of those midfielders. And if you're only getting one of those midfielders, which ones is it? Very multi-layered.
Okay, so I absolutely love the Bowen pick for this week. I love it. I think Luton are going to be attacking. Right, it's their first game of the Premier League at Kenilworth Road. They're going to want to be like out there attacking. That is going to leave space for West Ham. I think Bowen, James Ward-Prowse, Antonio, any of them for a punt for this week, perfect. However, the fixtures for West Ham afterwards are dreadful. So if you are investing in Bowen, it's got to be a long-term thing. I wouldn't be taking a hit to get Bowen in. I think that's what I'm saying. Because even though he could do really well this week, next week, you're going to have to change him again, I think is my view. Gabriel and Salah out through Udogie and Mbeumo is a transfer I would 100% make for a hit.
Yeah. That's really useful for my team in a bit, because I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is that the Mbeumo position, if you don't have Sterling or Maddison, I'd prefer them to Mbeumo. But if you've got Sterling and Maddison in there, then I think you go for Mbeumo.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And as I said, good foreshadowing for my team in a bit as well. Let's round off this team news. Just get it out of the way so that we are clear for some more super chats when they come in. The last one I just wanted to draw people's attention to. It's very much a kind of advanced planning one, but sometimes it's that advanced planning and making sure you've got players in for game week 6, 7, etc. onwards that makes all the difference. And it is of course about Newcastle. Sven Botman had an ankle injury in the most recent game, had to come off. He's had a scan, but the injury, quote, isn't too bad, according to Eddie Howe, which is really good to hear. The Dutchman has been, quote, very lightly jogging this week. A decision on whether or not he's going to be involved in game week 4 will be made today, which is fantastic, because we kind of assumed he'd be out for a while. We were loosely quoted 3 weeks. But if there's a decision being made today, maybe by the time we need our Newcastle defender, which is game week 6 when they face Sheffield United away and then go on a fantastic run, hopefully Botman's going to be fine.
Sounds like it, doesn't it? I think it means that you don't have an issue if you're a Botman owner. I mean, are you playing Botman this week anyway? Hopefully you don't need to, and you're going to bench him anyway. But I think if you've got Botman now, you don't have to worry about selling him. Like, he's just one that you can just leave on your bench and be dealt with. So yeah, I think it's good news for us in FPL, because after the international break, that's when you really want your Newcastle players to come in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got my eye on. I even nearly did Gabriel to Botman last week, and I'm glad I didn't, because then I would be sat here with the headache. But it sounds like it's a headache I don't actually need to have. So I probably will be. It'll either be Trippier or Botman in a couple of weeks' time when I get the chance to do it. So yeah, that is the summary of the biggest bits of team news in FPL this week going into the deadline. We are about 45 minutes away, and so what we should probably do now, Sam, is have a look at your team. How it got on in game week 3 is on the screen right now. So feel free to talk us through that if you'd like, and then we can stick on. It's not really your bust team anymore because you have now made your transfer.
I've made my transfer, yeah. So game week 3 went really well. It was a really good game week for me. I think the midfield generally were the reason why that happened. So Bruno Fernandes obviously doing bits alongside Diaby, and then Maddison, Saka also returning, Foden coming on for the assist, which was nice given the illness thing. I was like, that is really annoying, as I'd told Salah in order to bring him in. So I was slightly concerned on Saturday when that news was going about Foden that I'd made 2 transfers last week, and he was not going to play, and then I'd have to sit through Salah, and my other player that I bought in, it was Wissa, blanked as well. So I was thinking, oh, this is going to be an utter disaster. But in the end, it was fine. And I think, going forward, I'm happy to have Foden for this week. It seems like he's fit and available to play over his illness. And Wissa, he's got a nice fixture coming up this week against Bournemouth. And then obviously it's a tough game in game week 5 against Newcastle, but then game week 6 is Everton. So I would expect to see Brentford getting back to goal scoring ways after that. So I'm fine with that. Obviously Haaland could have and should have been more, but who even cares, because everyone's got him anyway. Chilwell was a little bit frustrating. I don't know how you feel about this, David, but for me, I was a little bit frustrated as a Chilwell owner watching that Chelsea game, because obviously all the other Chelsea defenders, the likes of Gusto, and I was like, oh, that's a bit annoying that Chilwell's only got the 6, but you shouldn't knock it, really.
So I didn't care what Chilwell did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that actually the rest of my defence was so poor last week. Stupinian with 1, Saliba with 1, Kabore with 1, Baldock with 1. It was like, wow, okay, I'll take the 6 points for Chilwell. So it's my defence that kind of is standing out really as an issue that I need to kind of deal with, particularly my goalkeeper, who I cannot stand at the moment. He is a real annoyance to me each week, and I think he will annoy me again in game week 4, to be honest, because he's going up against an Arsenal side who I think will score against him too. So unless he can make some save points, I think Onana will continue to be a frustration. But a really nice week again, 64, nice green arrow, like you can see on the screen, up to 46k. So getting back some of that I lost going into game week 3. From in game week 2, I'd lost a load of rank because I was at 15k after game week 1, lost a load of rank, and then gained a load of it back again. So positive game week, just need to build on it now.
Yeah, and so your current team is on the screen. Sorry, I missed if you actually mentioned your transfer, because I've just been inundated with more super chats, which I was just lining up ready for in a minute. But I've got
I haven't. So I made 1 transfer this week. So I said to David when he messaged me earlier, I was waiting for transfer window news before I made my decision. And then I said, but the news I'm waiting for is whether George Baldock is going to Athens or not. I mean, who cares, really?
What, like his stag do? Or that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, is he just, going out on the lash? No, as in, was he going to leave? Because that was rumoured yesterday. And I was like, oh gosh, that's a bit random. And if he does leave, then I might get rid. And then I was looking at the fixtures for Sheffield United and for Luton. And although Sheffield United have the much nicer fixture this week, because they're playing an Everton side that haven't yet scored in the Premier League, Kabore's got nicer fixtures in the long run. So if I was only going to hold one of my 4.0s, I was kind of like, I'll hold Kabore over Baldock. I've gone for Van de Ven as my replacement for Baldock. Now, this might be my Spurs weirdness coming in, or it could just be another one of my random feelings that I get sometimes, like with Sterling last week, like with Pape Sarr the week before. Van de Ven is absolutely massive and goes up for every single set piece. And we now have a set piece delivery taker that's actually really good at delivering set pieces, corners, free kicks, everything. James Maddison is brilliant. So whilst Udogie is the obvious pick and is going to likely pick up assists as we go through the season, I look at Van de Ven, who we don't have a replacement for, which is why we saw him play in the League Cup. And yes, before you all start, I know he got an own goal in the League Cup, but that just fine. I do think that Spurs will keep clean sheets because we are looking much better defensively, and Vicario in goal has really impressed me since he arrived. And I think Van de Ven will be up there for the free kicks, for the corners, and I can see some headed goals from him. So I wanted somebody that was. There's no real rotation risk there. There is a little bit with Udogie with Ben Davies, but I just don't see it really. I don't think Ben Davies comes in and replaces him. But Van de Ven, there isn't really anybody else that can do that. Not right now, not with the players we're trying to shift before the window closes. So Van de Ven came in and he's a really nice differential. So if he does score a goal and is assisted by Maddison, that would be absolute scenes for my FPL team. And I kind of like that.
I have to say, I do really like it because I think, and so we'll come on to my team in a few minutes once we've got through these super chats, but I am in two minds as to whether or not to take a hit to get Udogie for Gabriel, right? The one thing that holds me back is that, is he going to start every week, for example? And whilst the Spurs clean sheet is looking like you can rely on it in the favourable games, I know they kept one against United. I mean, I'm still not convinced enough yet.
I'm not sure how.
Yeah, well, true. I'm not convinced enough yet to point to them and say they are a team I want a defender from every single game week. The centre-back who's more likely to start games than the wing-back and more benchable in the tricky ones in a world where you've got Saliba as well, because that's actually not bad. You can factor a Spurs centre back into a rotation much better than you feel like you could with a wing back. So I actually really like that. It's very team dependent, but then it has to be, right? So,
and that's the other thing is that obviously with Spurs and Arsenal, the home fixtures always rotate. So I could, if I wanted to, play Saliba in all of his home fixtures, play Van de Ven in all of his away fixtures, on all of his home fixtures, and then have them rotating nicely. Plus, in my team, I've also got the Estupinian factor. And whether I want to play him every week in the tougher fixtures also remains to be seen. And then there's Kabore as well, who in the easier fixtures, maybe I might want to play him because he's got some attacking threat there too. So in my head, when I was looking at this, I was kind of thinking, Van de Ven's been in my head all week. I've been talking about it since last Saturday when I watched Spurs, about how I really wanted to go for Van de Ven. He sat in the bonus points the whole match as well and was only overtaken right at the death by a clearance by Romero for the third bonus point. So I think that Romero and Van de Ven is quite tight between the two of them, but they're secure of starts. They're going to start week upon week for Spurs, particularly now we're out of the League Cup as well. It's going to be game upon game upon game for the pair of them. They're going to be up there for set pieces. I like the fact that they're in at 4.5, so you can bench them around the tougher fixtures that Spurs have, because I agree with you, Spurs won't keep clean sheets against some of the bigger clubs. But for these next two against Burnley and Sheffield United, I can play my Spurs defender knowing there's some attacking potential there too, particularly now we've got James Maddison in the team with his set piece threat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it looks very good. I do like that transfer. I think it's a good one. But I have to say, it's things that I love to see. The super chats, guys, you've been so generous. Thank you so much. The next three especially are very, very generous indeed. It's a fantastic way to help support the channel. But also, so is liking the video as well. And of course, that is absolutely free. So if you haven't already done that, then do that too. Show us some love. That helps things out. There's 353 of you watching live. Only 91 of you have liked it. Let's bump that up. Yeah, come on, guys. Now, let's go to Andre Sugianto, who gave us 50,000 of his currency. And at first I was like, whoa, it doesn't quite track that way. It's Indonesian rubialas, I think it is. I had a quick Google. It's generous, but it's not like 50 grand. But thank you anyway. It's fantastic. The question here is, take a hit for Matoma to Maddison, or Ødegaard to Maddison, or Pedro to Alvarez. And then, outside of that, who to bench out of Ødegaard and Matoma in option C, I think. And then option D is don't take the hit. So there's four options there. Matoma to Maddison, or Ødegaard to Maddison. Or keep both of those midfielders and bench one of them, and then sell Pedro to get Alvarez. Or D is just do nothing. Don't take a hit.
Yeah, they are tough choices. I don't think I'd hit Matoma out for Maddison, because I think Matoma could score against Newcastle. There could be something there, couldn't there? Would I hit out Ødegaard for Maddison? I probably that's closer, because that's a really difficult fixture, and Ødegaard hasn't exactly been setting the world on fire. And I would assume there's probably a Saka in there anyway. So do you need both? Pedro to Alvarez, I like. Maddison and Erdegaard, Pedro and Alvarez. I think I would probably do either of those for a hit. And yeah, I think I would probably do the hit for those. I think having Maddison is going to be quite important though. So I'd probably, if you're going to do the hit, I'd probably err on the Erdegaard to Maddison one.
Yeah, I think very quickly, I think Maddison is going to become one of those players that people really don't want to be going without. He is going to be very, very popular. He's only, the thing is though, he's only in like 21% of teams as of the last deadline. That is going to go up a lot. So he's going to help you steal a march on, by the sounds of it, roughly 70% of the FPL world. But you are going to be left in the dust by the really engaged managers, I would suggest, if you don't have him. So if it takes a hit to get Maddison, I agree. I think that's the way you've got to go. Let's move on to the next super chat, which is very, very generous. €23.99.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is so generous from Ahmed. So yeah, it just...
I'll make this answer super good.
Yeah,
then.
this better be a good answer,
No
Sam.
pressure.
This better be a good answer because he's paid €23 for this. So I got Pedro and one free transfer. No Sterling, no Maddison, no Mbeumo.
Oh.
Yeah, so I see where this is going. I wanted Bowen, and I heard Sam talking about Bowen, Mitoma, or Erdegaard out for Bowen. Or is that crazy? And then a hit for Pedro for either Jackson or Watkins. Any thoughts? So let's have an answer that's really worth every cent.
So I really love Bowen. I really love the Bowen pick for this week. I think he could do really well. But, and the big but is the fixtures the weeks after. I think if you do Bowen this week, you have to be prepared to wildcard the week after. Is my view. Or hokey cokey him in and out, which is why I don't think you can take a hit as part of the Bowen thing, because unless you are, wild carding, like I say, the week after. I don't think Pedro is such an issue this week. I honestly don't. I think with the Welbeck news, I think it's less of a problem. But not having Sterling or Maddison or Mbeumo for the fixtures that they've got coming up this week, I think is more problematic. So if that's my team this week, my free transfer would be Erdegaard to Maddison. That's what I would do this weekend. Would I hit for somebody else, like Pedro out for... So that's the other option, isn't it? Is that you do the hit and you take Pedro out for Jackson. Because then you've got a Chelsea attacker in that game. And let's be honest, if Sterling plays well, I'd expect Jackson to get some returns in that game because he's going to make Jackson a better pick. I would definitely, the one free transfer I would do would be Erdegaard to Maddison. The question I would have is, do you want to hit out Pedro for Jackson? It would be Jackson I'd prioritise over Watkins, I think, because of the fixtures more longer term. Or would I actually prefer to change out somebody else from the midfield, like get rid of Mitoma and get Mbeumo? Probably. Yeah. What do you think?
What do I think? I mean, that's a good point. I mean, he's paid enough. We should get two answers here. Absolutely. I think the Bowen thing, I think you are right. I think that it's cool, but if you don't have Maddison, I think that's a higher priority. It would be nice to have Bowen, but I think just keep watching him and save your transfers for getting him in your team for game week 9, whether or not that's a transfer or a wild card. I think... Oh, that's my alarm reminding me to set my team every Friday at 6 o'clock.
Don't forget.
Yeah, don't forget. Like I could when I set that alarm up before I did deadline streams, and I forgot to turn it off now that I do them. It's like I would forget in this setting. Right, so back to this thing.
Imagine you, or to be fair though, you could be so busy talking about this stuff that you just miss it.
Yeah. Well, if you want me to miss the deadline, guys, send in some more super chats.
Keep super chatting, but David will forget.
Yeah. It's literally the definition of bribery, sort of. So yeah, I think Mitoma to Bowen, yeah, I mean maybe, but I think you got to have Maddison. A hit for Pedro to Jackson, I actually don't think is that bad because I think it does set you up. Yeah,
it's a long-term hit, isn't it? That one.
When you think about hits, it's like you do need to find some way to recoup that, and if you're gonna get a hit to get a guy you're gonna sell, that's not good long-term strategy. However, Chelsea fixtures are fantastic for the next 6, and you need to kind of get on Chelsea now because they're good for the next 6, and then after that they're awful. So the time to be invested in Chelsea is genuinely right now. And fine, you can go next week, but the longer you leave Jackson and the longer you leave Sterling, the less important they actually become for you to get. Because when you look at the season ticker for game weeks 9 to 13 or 15, 14, something like that, it is, Chelsea go from being like top of the season ticker or second/third, depending on how you're sorting it, in this current run, to being like in the bottom 3. So getting a hit to get yourself in a 6-game week run of Chelsea, I think that's the way to go. I actually think that would be a good move, Ahmed, if that's what is on your mind. So if you can do someone to Maddison.
Odegaard to Maddison,
yes,
for free, perfect. That makes loads of sense in that team. The question is, do you take out, and I'm thinking about budget, I would assume, well, Odegaard to Maddison's going to save you a bit. Is that going to give you, and Sterling's cheaper, so you probably could go Matoma to Sterling.
Ooh. Yes, because
you're going to have the budget.
Pedro to Jackson in that scenario is actually going to be harder to do. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, do that. What Sam said.
Yeah.
That's better.
That's what I think I'd do. I think I would take the hit, because I think if you take a hit for Sterling and Maddison this week, and actually, weirdly, Kelly Summers been texting me to talk about her transfers, and
now that's a
the
flex.
Transfers
that's a definite flex.
Well, yeah, but we do the pod together.
No, I know, I'm
joking. We were talking about these exact transfers, although not Odegaard, but Matoma was one of the ones going, and she was like, am I brave enough to sell Matoma for Sterling? And I get that feeling. I get the feeling of being, it does feel quite a brave thing to do to sell Matoma, because he could return this week. But if you look at it as a 6-week thing, and that's the thing we're taking a hit, like, let's look at Chelsea's fixtures for 6 weeks. If you're bringing in Maddison and Sterling for all of that time, I would expect them to outscore Odegaard and Matoma in that period of time. Yeah. And therefore it's worth the hit.
Actually, just I always have tables and things just hidden away in the background for these streams, one of which was the season ticket for the next 6 games.
Oh, there you go.
Forest at home, Bournemouth away, Villa at home, Fulham away, Burnley away, Arsenal at home in the next 6. Now, the interesting thing about this is that of the 6 worst teams for minutes per expected goals conceded so far this season, Chelsea face 3 of the 6 worst of those in the next 6. Spurs are in an even nicer position. So if we're on the subject of Maddison, the 4 worst teams for minutes per expected goals conceded so far this season, which are Burnley, Sheffield United, Luton and Fulham, Spurs faced all 4 of them in the next 6. And so now is the time for those guys, because they have the best fixtures, like in any possible sense.
And the other thing is that the other 2 fixtures that Spurs have in there are Arsenal and Liverpool. And those games are always ridiculously high scoring, because the North London derby is bonkers always. And the game against Liverpool, the FPL family derby, is also always ridiculous. Like it was 3-2 last season. There's just always goals in those games. So Maddison just feels like an absolute no-brainer to me. And if you need a -4 to get him, I honestly think that that's the right thing.
Yeah, I think so. The super chats are flying in, so we're going to try and get through them, and we still got to rate these teams that are coming from Twitter, and I got to do my transfers. So we've got 26 minutes to go. So let's go. Right, so
I'm going to have to be quicker.
FBL El Hadari's back again, and he seems to have taken on board the goalkeeper suggestion. So 0.4 in the bank, Pickford to Flecken, or João Pedro to question mark. So he just means I don't know. Leaning towards goalkeepers. I mean, I think Pedro has a higher chance of starting.
It's so shame that it's not 0.5 in the bank.
Because then you could go to Vis. No, you wouldn't be able to go to Vista anymore. You might be able to get to Beto. I don't know. But no, I think that goalie switch is the one to do. I think Flecken is the one. What do you think, Sam?
I don't love Flecken, but I do, at that price point, I think he probably is. I was just looking at the goalkeepers while you were talking then to see whether there's anybody else in that bracket that I think is any better than Flecken, and I don't think there is, because you can't get to the 5s, which is annoying, because if you could have got to the 5s, although Vicario has gone up by 0.1 anyway, so you can't get there. I think after Vicario, and you can't get to Edison, Flecken probably is the next best option. Bournemouth this week, there's Newcastle tough, then it's Everton. The fixtures are deep. He's got to be a better option than Pickford. He's got to be.
I think he is. And Brentford's defence has been really good so far. And last season, they had the biggest gap between shots in the box conceded and big chances conceded. So they concede lots of efforts, but they make sure that those efforts aren't big. So it means the goalie makes lots of saves, and that's why he gets lots of bonus. So yeah, like just Flecken is the way to go. I think I've had him since Game Week 1, and I've not looked back, and very happy with him. So Russell Baker has submitted the whole team. I think I remember us having this conversation with Russell last week. You guys are great listeners. So Johnston, Gusto, Chilwell, Estupiñán, Rashford, Maddison, Saka, Foden, Eze, Isak, Haaland. Do I do Rashford to Sterling, Pedro to Jackson, or Kabore to Udogie, or do I roll?
Well, I'm just also looking at what that would mean for the bench, because
Yeah.
if you do, so this is the other thing I always look at is the if you're going to make a transfer this week and improve your the 8 attacking players, what does that mean for your bench and who has to move to the bench? So in this team, you'd have Rashford, Maddison, Saka, Foden, and Eze, Isak, Haaland.
I don't think he's given us the bench.
No, but if you sell Rashford for Sterling, because Pedro, that's a no-brainer. But the Pedro to Jackson thing, somebody's got to be benched of that team that he sent us, because you're going to play Jackson, so you'd probably have to bench either Eze or Isak, wouldn't you, of that team?
Yeah.
The same with Kabore. If you sell Kabore for Udogie, you've got to bench someone in that team. So maybe like Eze, I don't like the Eze pick. Even this week, I don't like it. I don't think that Crystal Palace will score that many goals. Isak, I don't think would I want to bench him against Brighton? I don't think so. I think if you've got him, you'd want to play him. I think I probably would do Rashford to Sterling of that. Pedro to Jackson is my preferred. Actually,
yeah, I would do that one.
Of my transfers, Pedro to Jackson is the preferred one. And then who are you benching though? Isak or Eze? It's one of the two. I think you probably have to bench Isak. Isak against Brighton. I think you probably would have to bench Isak, which I hate.
Yeah, it's tricky. But I agree with you. I do think that Pedro is the transfer to make, just because Rashford, I think, outscores Pedro this week.
And next week, then you've got Brighton, Burnley, Palace, Brentford, like Sheffield United. The fixtures pick up again for United, don't they? So, and you're going to have Højlund in there. So you're going to have that number 9. He's going to be out wide. I think Rashford's a hold. So Pedro to Jackson, and give yourself a benching headache. And you've got to choose between Eze and Isak for your bench.
Nice. Yeah, sounds like a good answer to me. We've got one more super chat for now, but that may increase. Tuckles says, hi, legends. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. Is it worth a -4 to sell Fabianski for Areola or Flecken? My other keeper is Turner, likely to get 1 or 2 points. I am in the top 100k.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I hate goalie changes generally. I can't believe how much we've spoken about goalie changes.
I think. But the thing is, if you don't have one, you're actually in a bit of a mess. So Turner and Fabianski is actually not a very nice combination, because Fabianski's not playing. Turner may actually end up not playing that much soon. Turner away at Chelsea, I wouldn't be expecting much from. So -4. I think if you get in one of those set and forgets, Areola is a set and forget. If you've got him now, he's a set and forget. Flecken, I think, also is a set and forget. If you're spending a -4 to get a set and forget and you just leave them there, they should, over the course of hopefully 10, 12, 14, 16 game weeks, pay back.
Yes, except for it depends when you're going to play your wild card, doesn't it? Because like, I would argue that Areola, you getting him in, you probably get a clean sheet against Luton. But do you even get a clean sheet against Luton? It's their first home game. Like, I can see them scoring at Kenilworth Road tonight. So I don't think there's a clean sheet there. And then the next 2 are dreadful. So I don't think there's any clean sheets or points there for him. So arguably, if you take a -4 for Areola this week, I think you're on 1, 2, you may be on 4 points across those 3 fixtures. Flecken, I think he's got more potential for Hull. So I think of the 2, Flecken would be my preferred of those 2 options to sell Fabianski for him. Do I think it's worth a -4 though? Because if Flecken loses the clean sheet, I'm just looking at the Brentford fixtures. If Flecken loses the clean sheet, I mean, this week it's Bournemouth. Bournemouth have got goals in them. They've got players in there that can score goals. The week after, he's got Newcastle. They could score. The week after it's Everton, he'll keep a clean sheet. So in the next 3, you've probably got 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 points for Flecken, probably. So he's going to outscore. So he will outscore Fabianski by enough. Well, he will outscore Turner by enough that I think the hit is worth it. But it depends when your wild card is going to be. If your wild card is going to come at a point where, like, if you're planning to wild card in, say, the second international break, so you've only got 3, 4 game weeks to go, it might not be worth it. But if you're planning to hold your wild card till game week 16, 17, then it probably is worth it. God, that was a lot for a goalkeeper thing, wasn't it? That was
no,
a lot.
But it's important. But you have to get the goalkeepers right, and sometimes you have to do a lot of calculations and be very meticulous as well. So yeah, hopefully that was useful advice for Tuchel's. It's lots to think about, and only 18 minutes in which to think about it. So I'm going to very selfishly just quickly move on to my team because, as ever, Sam's advice is actually quite helpful. I said that like I was surprised, but like I'm not. I promise.
I'm surprised.
I just sent it to you on Slack as well, so you've got it there. Last week, 70 points up to 19k. Flecken 4 points, Cash 17, DRB 12. They're the sort of the main performers, right? But game week 4, I got 2 free transfers still because of course I only used 1 last week. At the moment, and I'm starting Anderson over Cash, and my plan had been to do Rashford and Pedro to Maddison and Jackson.
Okay.
We previously talked about, like, I actually think Rashford will do okay this week, but I actually think Fernandes is the Man United asset that I want. So I'm not averse to getting rid of Rashford now, getting through the Brighton game, and coming back in maybe on I think it's game week 9 when they get really nice on Fernandes potentially. But I don't have Maddison, obviously, and I do think that Rashford, of the 5 midfielders I've got there, is the one to sell to get to Maddison. And then, of course, there is absolutely no room for Sterling, so Pedro up to Sterling is no issue. Money is honestly no problem here because I sold Salah to Foden, so I've got 4.9 million in the bank, so I can basically do whatever I want, which is quite nice. So that's the situation I'm in. I think that is fairly straightforward, although shout at me if I'm doing things wrong. My final thing to think about then is what I do with Cash and Gabriel, because I'm currently starting Estupiñán, but really I'm thinking that I'm probably either going to start Cash or I start whoever I sell Gabriel for on a -4 and bench both Cash and Estupiñán. So that's really the crux of the problem. But I mean, yeah, what do you think of those 2 sets there? The 2 attacking switches for free and -4. So
the Rashford to Maddison thing, looking at your midfield, makes perfect sense. Like normally I'd say you hold Rashford, but there's no one else you can sell there to get Maddison in, and you need to get Maddison in, I think. So that makes sense. Pedro to Jackson also makes perfect sense. What you do about the defence is interesting because my view on how Liverpool are going to play this weekend is that they are going to play the high press that they played against Chelsea. So they're going to go into this game against Aston Villa very much like the game that they played against Chelsea in game week 1. And they're going to do that because they don't have a defence. So the only way that they can get something from this game, in my view, is to rely on Jota, Diaz, Salah and Gakpo, and the fact that those guys will press hard on that Aston Villa defence. What does that mean for Aston Villa? Well, I think it means that Matt Cash does not have that really advanced role that he did last weekend. Instead, he's going to be asked to be dealing with Luis Diaz more. He's going to be having to drop back and defend more than he is going to be marauding forward in attack. So I think that makes him a less attractive option because he's got to go to Anfield. I don't think going to Anfield is very nice for clean sheets anyway. There could be some attacking threat, but I think we'll see less of that this week because of the way I suspect Liverpool set up. So it makes sense for him to be on your bench. Gabriel is clearly your biggest issue.
Yeah.
And he's not going to stop being an issue over the next few weeks. So I think it's the right thing to move him on. But the question is, do you need to? Because I look at your defence with Chilwell and Anderson and Estupiñán to a certain extent. Because if you take Gabriel out for a Spurs defender, or, I mean, it's probably a Spurs defender, I imagine. It's probably Udogie or somebody that you'd be looking at. If you do that, that means you have to bench Estupiñán. And yes, I don't think there's a clean sheet, but could there be attacking returns? Absolutely, there could be, couldn't there? Yeah. So
It's a tricky place
because
to be.
it's because it's a -4. Like the first two
Exactly.
transfers are no-brainers, but because the Gabriel one is a -4, and because you have other bench options, so if anybody does miss out, you've got Cash that can come in, you've got Archer that can come in. So you're not relying on that change, and your first 11 doesn't need the -4. And I
No,
think for me right now, given your rank, you a -4 is going to take you back behind me,
we can't have that.
which no, but that's the point I'm making is there's so
Yeah, you're
little
right.
points between things at the moment that if you don't have to take the -4, I wouldn't. So you're talking about making two transfers that really strengthen your team with Maddison and Jackson coming in. You cover out the best player at Spurs and the second best player at Chelsea from an attacking perspective, because Sterling's going to be very hard for you to get because of the midfield that you own currently.
Yeah.
So I think I would just do those two transfers and play a Stupinian, because if a Stupinian gets an attacking return and he's on your bench, even if you've got a Spurs defender in who's kept a clean sheet, you're going to be annoyed with yourself because you've done the -4. And I just wait and then next week deal with Gabriel.
Yeah, I
You
think.
don't need to worry about price drops, do you? Because you've got 4.5 million in the
Yeah,
bank or what.
that's an excellent point. My only counter was going to be, surely if I don't sell Gabriel this week, he's going to be 4.6 by the time we start game week 5. But as you say, that probably isn't going to matter because I do have a lot of money rolling around. I think you're right. I think the hit probably is unnecessary because all it would really do, it wouldn't leverage enough. And I think that, I do want a Spurs defender longer term, but maybe my transfer for game week 5 is Gabriel to an Udogie or Van de Ven, or once we've had an extra week to just suss out the Postecoglou pirouette, if we can call it that. That's like the rotation. That's terrible. It's just the first word beginning with P I could think of. But we at some point we will get some kind of rotation-oriented alliteration. But yeah,
I'm not sure we'll see that much rotation at Spurs, because we're not until the FA Cup kicks off, and even then, I don't suspect we'll see a lot of it. We've only got one other competition to play outside the Premier League, so he won't need to rotate very much this year. There's no European football, there's no League Cup anymore. So why would he? Why rotate it unless you've got two players of equal standing? Like on the other side, Porro and Royale, I can see it.
Yeah, I
because
think that's
they're both good. Yeah. On the other side, Ben Davies is not as good a player as Udogie is. So I think Udogie's fairly safe. The centre backs are safe. You'll get some Ben Davies coming on for the last 20 minutes of games. That's going to happen regularly.
Yeah.
But I don't think we'll see Udogie miss out on starts very often, because why? There's nothing going on at Spurs.
Yeah, that's very true. I think maybe I'll be okay, and I think it's going to be game week 5 that I have to go in. I think just the thing that's convinced me with Udogie in terms of not taking the hit and then starting Udogie and benching Estupiñán and Cash is the fact that actually so far Udogie should have only actually been involved in 0.56 goals, 3 chances created, just 1 shot in the box. He's done very well so far, but those numbers don't scream take a hit for him. So I think I will just tweak my 11, and then I will have a quick panic about who I start, Estupiñán or Cash. I think that's a coin flip, to be honest. And yeah, I'll go from there.
Estupiñán will attack more than Cash, I think, in this game. I think Cash is going to be Liverpool have to play a high press. They have to. I can't see how they can play otherwise with the defence they've got. They can't rely on the defence.
Yeah,
so they're going to have to rely on the attacking return, the attacking players. And in that case, that means Matt Cash is going to be asked to defend more. He have to, because Liverpool are going to be attacking more. Whereas Estupiñán, I think, will just play his normal game. So he'll be up there attacking because that's what he does.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. Yeah, I will certainly take that into consideration in the next 11 minutes while I try and make my final decisions. I'm going to try and put as much of what comes next on you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So,
while you panic.
Yeah, whilst I panic and try and press some buttons in time. So Tuchels has given us another super chat, which is very nice. No question here. Just said, thank you so much. Love the content. I don't like to wildcard too soon. Really grateful for the advice. Good luck for Game Week 4. Well, thank you, Tuchels. That's very kind of you to send that in via super chat. We appreciate all the super chats. A good way to support the channel. Yu Jin Song has written in with the super chat to say, would you play Bruno, I'm guessing Fernandes, or Visser for Game Week 4? So while you answer that, I'm going to make my transfers.
What a choice that is. Bruno or... that is really hard, because Bruno I still think could do well against Arsenal. Arsenal defence has been... They've not been watertight this season, and he's on penalties. So I think that's not a player I'd want to be benching this week. But then also, Visser has a really nice fixture. I don't think you can. If you've spent money on Bruno Fernandes in FPL, I don't think you can bench him. I think you'd have to bench Rissa. I think you have to, and you've got the additional points for the midfielders. I think that's really hard because the Arsenal fixture is really tough, whereas the Brentford fixture is not. Is there no one else you can bench?
I always think that when those questions come in, I'm like, guys, come on.
There's got to be someone else that can be
else.
benched. There's got to be someone else that could be benched there, surely.
Yeah,
send us some of the other players in your team. There must be somebody else.
I would start both of them if I had them, to be honest, because I think
I would. I've got both of them. They're both starting for me.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
I think I'd bench if it really is that tight. I think Wissa would be the one I would bench, but only because I don't think you can bench Bruno Fernandes. Imagine how annoyed you're going to be if Bruno Fernandes gets a penalty and you benched him.
The other thing about Arsenal is that their weakest... I was actually just got on a piece of paper right here from a video I did the other day. Arsenal's weakest defensive area so far this season is the centre. They've conceded more chances through the middle than they have down the left or the right. Now, they aren't by any stretch necessarily the worst centre in the Premier League. There are teams that are worse than Arsenal at defending there. But so far, Arsenal are giving up more chances to opposing players in the middle than they are on the wing. And so a number 8 or a number 10 can obviously benefit from that. So it's worth knowing that as well, to be honest.
Yeah. There's got to be someone else that you can bench. Surely you've got somebody that's lesser in that team that you could pop on the bench than one of those two. I think you want to play both of them, really.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's the end of our super chat. So we'll just double check it. We've got 8 minutes in which to go through the teams that came into us from Twitter. So hopefully we hopefully we are able to give everyone who sent in their team some good value. So I've made my transfers now. I'm just deciding Estupiñán versus Cash whilst we go through some of these teams. So the first one comes from Susie Willis, who has got a team of Flecken, Estupiñán, Cash and Chilwell, Saka, Erdegaard, Fernandes, Eze and Foden, Haaland and Watkins with a bench of Turner, Pedro, Botman and Bayer. And whilst you're giving your initial reaction to that, I'm just going to go and double check to see if there were any specific questions. So that is Susie Willis's team.
Did she say how many transfers she's got? Has she got any?
So I'm just double checking that now. Pedro needs to go, but with 0.6 in the bank, Archer, Antonio, Edouard are the only options.
So I actually do like Antonio as a pick for this week because then you can bench him for the next two and not worry about it.
Yeah, because he's a bit cheaper.
Yeah. And also, looking at the rest of that team, they look decent. I think ahead of that game against Luton, that's what I do. I do João Pedro to Antonio, play the fixture, and then bench Antonio for the two difficult ones that they've got coming after that.
Yep, I think that works for me. I would do that. I think it's it's a good shout. And also, West Ham are not really being looked at right now, so you're definitely going to get some advantages from that.
Differential, yeah.
So Mohamed didn't send in a team, but simply just sent in a screenshot of some transfers. I don't know what the rest of his team is, but he's got 2 free transfers, 0.4 in the bank, Mitoma and Pedro to Maddison and Alvarez.
Mitoma and Pedro. I mean, that, yeah. Yes, do that. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. That's a nice easy one. So yeah, Mohamed, that's definitely the way to go. Right, I've just saved my team. I'll probably tell you what I've done after the deadline, so we can get through the rest of these teams. Froda, I think I'm saying that correct. Anana in goal. Gay, Estupiñán, Chilwell, Rashford, Saka, Sterling, Burma, Maddison, and then Jackson and Haaland with a bench of Turner, Saliba, Kabore, and Mubama. And in terms of any comments to go with it, he simply says, "Is it too template?"
Nothing's too template at this point.
Exactly.
Like, genuinely, we are in game week 4. Nothing at this point is template because things are going to change. And I think this season more than ever, we might not have an obvious template that appears. And I genuinely believe that because in previous seasons, you've had Haaland, Kane, or Haaland and Salah, and you've had like these multiple premiums that you've wanted, all three that you've wanted to own. And as a result of that, that's meant that the rest of your team has become more template by nature because everybody is roughly invested in the same players alongside them because you've got to make the team budget work. This year, as you and I both know from having sold Salah last week, you don't have that as an issue. And there are so many options, particularly in the midfield right now. And even arguably in the last week, we've seen the forwards give us so many options that what I think you'll see is people just chopping and changing and moving around. Like the amount of people that have said, oh, I'm going to sell Matoma this week. I get that. I totally understand that because you're not taking out a bad player. You're selling someone that in most weeks you wouldn't want to, but you're targeting someone else. So I think what we'll see is that there's going to be some template, but a lot of the time you're still going to see a lot of moving around and a lot of moving parts and people, chopping and changing. Like even when you look at Maddison, like I feel like we've spoken about Maddison a lot on this live stream, but he's only owned by 23% of the game. So he's not like hugely template. Haaland is, but Maddison's not really. He's 23%. All right, is way more than it was last week, but it's still not hugely, he's not everywhere. The same with Sterling. Like I don't have Sterling in my team. I can't really get him because of the way that my midfield is. So I think there's going to be a lot of managers that don't have players that you think probably do. So I wouldn't worry about template at all.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Eugene Tong has actually got back in with another super chat. I have Maddison, Sterling, Burmo, Saka, and Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, Jackson, and Visser. So that's the benching problem. I see his point. I wouldn't want to bench any of those people. It was Fernandes or Visser, wasn't it?
Oh my God. I mean, I think you have to bench Visser in that case. I think you have to.
Let's bench Visser in that situation.
He's horrible. And I apologise for the bench points that are inevitably going to come from that. But I don't think you've got any other choice. Yeah. I don't think you can bench Bruno Fernandes.
I agree. We've got 3 minutes left. If we get a super chat, we will defer to that. Otherwise, we will try and get through these final 3 teams. FPL_FPL, great name. Areola, Udogi, Chilwell, Trippier. Maddison and Burmo, Foden, Diaby, Saka, Jackson, Haaland. Turner, Estupiñán on the bench. Saliba and Osula is the 11. That's FPL. Any additional notes to come with it? I'll just double check that now. The comment is, it just said, go on, thumbs up. So it's just rate it.
I mean, it looks great, doesn't it? I think I play Estupiñán over Trippier. That's all I've got to say on it, really. I think the rest of it looks good.
Yeah.
And I advise Captain Maddison, just in case.
Yeah, that's what I've just done, because it was previously on Saka. Right, so then Fergus, Pickford, Chilwell, Estupiñán, Udogi, Rashford, Bruno, Saka, Martinelli, Richarlison, Haaland, Alvarez, bench of Turner, Shaw, Kabore, and Archer. And then in terms of any specific questions, what we got from Fergus was... Martinelli or Richarlison out. I'm looking at Maddison, Sterling, or Mbeumo. So okay, it's a Maddison, Sterling, or Mbeumo, and then who's he selling? Martinelli or Richarlison?
You're selling Richarlison.
Yeah,
like you're 100% selling Richarlison.
I think so.
And you're getting Maddison. That's what I do.
Yep. I agree. Nice and quick. We've got less than a minute. So Nick G, Onana, Gusto, Henry, Estupiñán, Saka, Foden, Sterling, Rashford, Eze, Haaland, Alvarez, Turner, Watkins on the bench. Bayer and Shaw. We've got less than a minute and we've got a guy with Watkins on the bench. What do we do, Sam?
Don't bench Watkins. Read them to me again.
What, the whole team? Onana, Gusto.
No, just the attackers. Just the attackers.
Haaland, Alvarez, Watkins, Saka, Foden, Sterling, Rashford, and Eze.
I'd bench Eze, play Watkins.
Okay. I would bench Rashford. I think Eze against Wolves is actually going to be quite messy. Eze's been very ready to kick on, and Wolves' defence look bad. But I can understand
rubbish going forwards.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Apart from him,
they haven't finished their dinner yet. That's the main thing. Right,
yeah.
The deadline has just passed, and we did manage to get it in on time. So well done. We got through everything. We got through all the super chats. We got through all the teams. We cut it close. To quote Back to the Future, why do we have to leave these things so damn close? But hey, that's just FPL. That's FPL for us. We got through it in the end. Can I put my team on the screen now? Because I did make decisions.
Still live, you can. If you've not changed the screen.
Yeah, so there it is. So, Sam, you'll be pleased to know I went against your advice. I actually started Cash instead of Estupiñán. But I totally get your point. I just suspect that there's a counterpoint here. There's 2 parallel universes running concurrently with each other. One where Liverpool press so hard and so high that Villa can't play. Alternatively, Villa do exactly the same thing at the other end, and Cash and Digne spend so long pestering the vacant space where Trent just isn't, because it's Trent, that they're able to pen Liverpool in, potentially. Do you see what I mean? Like, it's kind of like who can press hardest, because they are two teams that do love an intense press.
They do.
So it could go either way. And so I'm going to take a risk and lean into that possibility, right? I'm going to lean into that opportunity. And one of the things that I was looking at, first thing I did, and so here we go. We're going to go through what the members area does, because this is how I sort of finalised it in the end. So, of the two teams, Villa and Brighton, who is more likely to keep a clean sheet? And kind of technically it is Villa. Now, they're both playing a good team. Both Liverpool and Newcastle have been very good for XG this season. However, Brighton, only Fulham have conceded more big chances than them. They've actually conceded a hell of a lot of big chances. And so Newcastle should, in theory, score like 3 goals in this game. So I'm not looking at a clean sheet for a super. I'm probably not looking at one for Cash. But I wouldn't be surprised if Brighton concede more goals. So I did that first. Then I had a look at the possibility of attacking returns from my two defenders. So who's got a worse defence, Liverpool or Newcastle? And that, to be honest, is actually not even close. Because Newcastle so far have conceded just 3 big chances, and do consider that they've played City and Liverpool, and they're still in the top 3 for that stat. It's going to be very hard to get anything past Newcastle this week. Liverpool, conversely, 9 big chances conceded. That is the joint 6th worst in the league. And so Liverpool are more likely to concede than Newcastle. Final stage. Though this is all the stuff that I was going on whilst you were answering those questions, just going through these little things. But these are so useful in the members area to just really help focus your decisions.
Definitely.
Depersonalize them so that you're just making. If you can just base it on some numbers, you can just put it in a box, walk away, and if it goes wrong, it doesn't matter because you sort of made it objectively rather than subjectively. So far this season, this is just a number of players I was interested in that I've ticked. I'm going to untick Maddison, Sarr, Watkins, Diaby, move those away. So we just show your Stupid and Cash. And so far this season, Cash has just been actually a lot more threatening than Estupiñán. Estupiñán has been more creative. He's the more creative player. So 10 chances created, 3 of them big. 4 shots in the box, 1 big chance, 3 on target. However, Cash, not really much of a creator, but 6 shots in the box, that's 2 more than Estupiñán. 3 big chances, that's 2 more than Estupiñán. 4 shots on target, that's 1 more than Estupiñán. So what it all boiled down to in the end was expected goal involvement. Cash 2.32, Estupiñán's 1.42, and so far only Maddison, Haaland, Saka, and Bournemouth and Fernandes have better XGI than Cash. So what it came down to was I'm probably gonna be frustrated. Someone on that bench is going to score some points, and it's going to hurt more if it's Estupiñán because more people will start him. But the point is that so far, Cash looks like the more explosive one. He's technically more likely to keep a clean sheet because his defence is better than Brighton's, and he's technically more likely to... He's in an easier fixture for attacking returns because Liverpool's defence is worse than Newcastle. Hopefully that all made sense.
It does make sense. I do get it. Like, and to be fair, what you've just done with the members area is exactly what I do. I go and I look at the numbers but for me, I don't know. I'd have done it the other way around, but it's your team. And that's why we love FPL, isn't it?
Well,
because we are going to make some different decisions from time to time. But I think I just love Estupiñán's attacking returns. And what I love about him is that when he gets one late on in a game, you're going to get some baps out of him. And Matt Cash, I think last week, his stats would have skewed a little bit because we're only 3 game weeks in. So his stats would have skewed.
I will appreciate that maybe the stats are a little bit skewed, but I think there's the possibility he's playing out of position. I don't know. I can see both sides, but the rest of my team is good. I haven't taken the hit I thought I was, so I'm almost like up on the deal, which is a dumb thing to say, but like I'm willing to take some risks because I think my team is good. I just kind of feel like it might end up not really mattering. I reckon they'll score a similar number of points.
Do you know? Yeah, this whole conversation could be absolutely fruitless because they both get 2.
yeah. Or they might get -1 because they both get absolutely destroyed by Liverpool and Newcastle respectively. So
I don't see that happening. I just don't.
Well, okay, tell you what, high scoring in both games, like 3-3 or 4-4, so that the defenders in those games just get nothing. That's what I think is more likely. I don't necessarily think they're going to get destroyed, but I just think there will be lots of goals. I think there'll be lots of goals. So
Yeah, I agree.
There we are. Well, we made it through another deadline. Well done, everybody. That's 4 Friday nights in a row. We have done that achievement together. Well done. Next time we have a deadline will be in 2 weeks' time, and it will be a Saturday, which does, unfortunately, I think mean that it's less likely that we'll be able to offer you Sam. So I'm sorry, Sam Bonfield stands out there. That you're going to have to...
You can catch me on the Q&A with us.
I was just going to say, if you want to stand Sam some more, the Q&A is the place to do it. So, yeah, do look out for that. Of course, we've got all sorts of content coming up in the next couple of days. So, on Saturday evening, Karen will come to you with his live FPL stats of the day, reviewing the Saturday matches. We're going to have Rich or Flapjack, whichever of those names you'd like to give him. He's going to be on with Gianni on Sunday. And it's an international break, but that doesn't mean the content has to stop. We are going to have international break special episodes of almost all of our usual shows, so don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We appreciate that, there might be slightly less to talk about in that first week and more to talk about in the second week, but, we all know you want to hear about what the guys on the Scoutcast do outside of football, right? So there's going to be all sorts of fun and weird and wonderful things going on in the international break, so do get in touch. You know what it's like on social media. All of a sudden, everyone's like, do you like weather? And what's your favourite niche jigsaw puzzle? That's how it goes normally, so... Looking forward to that, Sam?
Absolutely.
It's always an excuse for me to just show a picture of the books on my bookshelf to really get everybody thinking about other planets when there's no football.
Wait.
Yeah, so it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So yeah, stay tuned for all of that, and of course, all of the usual shows in their usual format will be also available in the lead up to Game Week 5. So yeah, that's us for another week, another 2 weeks, I should say. Before we let these fine folks go and enjoy the very first game at the Premier League game at Kenilworth Road this millennium.
Can't wait for this one.
Is there anything you wanted to add? But perhaps maybe some thoughts on tonight's game.
I think this game will be really interesting. I think Luton score. I think West Ham probably win the game. But I think there's goals for both sides in this one. So the defenders I'd be staying away from. But yeah, I can't wait. I literally love the idea of the West Ham fans turning up at Kenilworth Road and trying to find the entrances. And I just think that these moments are why I love football so much. Like these promoted teams coming up, having their first home game. It's amazing. So yeah, I can't wait for this one tonight. I'll be getting my kids to bed so that I can be ready for the kickoff. Yeah, really enjoy it.
What I'm hoping on is that the VAR is in some old lady's room in that house that's in the away end, because it's probably quicker for him to just go to that lady's front room where she's got a game on than it is to communicate with Stockley Park, right? So fingers crossed we get some of that. I mean, that'd be brilliant, because that away end is one of the best. One of the most unique in English football, and it's generated memes and all sorts. So I'm looking forward
amazing, right? I can't wait for the ball to go over in somebody's garden and just to try and chuck it back for the next 5 minutes. Brilliant. I love watching. I love watching Friday night football. I think it's such a nice way to start the weekend, and I can't wait for this one. Kenilworth Road, I can't wait to see it hosting Premier League football. Friday night games for me. I know that means Friday FPL deadlines, but I love Friday night football almost as much as I love Monday night football. It's just something about finishing work and then getting to watch football in the evening that is the best thing.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. And the other thing, just one last thing before we let you go. If you've not seen the video yet of them knocking down that main stand at Kenilworth Road and rebuilding it in 13 weeks. It's incredible. My dad is actually a civil engineer, and so I have a little bit of an insight into some of just how much work they've had to put into just 13 weeks to build an entire football stand. It's not huge, but it doesn't need to be. It's still a very impressive feat, and it's taking a lot of the engineering world by storm.
It's amazing.
There's a I can't remember what you call it, where they sped the clip up. They literally had a camera on it for the whole 13 weeks, and you just from start to finish sped up. And the whole thing comes down, and then slowly the whole thing builds up again, and it's ready for tonight. It's unbelievable. So it's going to be really cool. Really, really cool.
It's amazing, really, isn't it, when you think about it? Because Like, they can't build a house in 13 weeks, let alone put up a football stadium. Like it was stand in a football stadium. Like it's really impressive. And I remember thinking when they cancelled their fixture in game week 2, there's no way that's ready for game week 4. So it's super impressive that they've got that stand ready, and they hosted a game in midweek, and now they can host a Premier League football match. Like, yeah, I can't wait for it.
It's going to be absolutely amazing. Well, we shall leave you fine, folks, to enjoy that. Thank you once again for joining us. If you've enjoyed it, hit the like button as well, subscribe, bell notification. You guys know the drill by now. Just click everything we tell you to, and you'll be good. So, yeah. As I said, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. So it's a goodbye from me.